Everyone. The other stream was closed out accidentally by Danny. I'm still streaming though. So let me see what I can do to get the folks from the other stream on. Um, yeah, we'll give it a few minutes to let the folks from the other stream come in. I'm gonna create a banner so that people, if they come into this stream, they can see that um, that we're actually streaming and that we didn't finish the other stream. But let me see real quick how I can put on the chat of the other streams that we're still doing this. In the meantime, I'm going to play you all some Phil Orks, the Ballad of Joe Hill. So let me put that on, and I'll try my best to recuperate as many people as we lost. So
Since I'm an American folk singer here in Scandinavia, I'd like to do a song about a Scandinavian folk singer who went to America. And this is a ballad about his life story. His name is Joe Hill. This is the Ballad of Joe Hill. Joe Hill come over from Sweden shore, looking for some work to do, and the Statue of Liberty waved him by as Joe come a-sailing through. Joe Hill, as Joe come a-sailing through. Oh, his clothes were coarse and his hopes were high as he headed for the promised land. And it took a few weeks on the out-of-work streets before he began to understand. Before he began to understand. And Joe got hired by Bowery Bar, sweeping up the saloon, as his rag would sail o'er the barroom rail. Sounded like he whistled on a tune. You could almost hear him whistling on a tune. So he headed out for the California shore. There things were just as bad. So he joined the industrial workers of the world, 'cause the union was the only friend he had. 'Cause the union was the only friend he had. Now the strikes were bloody and the strikes were black, as hard as they were long. In the dark of the night, Joe would stay awake and write. In the morning he would raise them with a song. In the morning he would raise them with a song. And he wrote his words to the tunes of the day, and he passed along the Union line. And the strikes were led and the songs were spread, and Joe Hill was always on the line. Yes, Joe Hill was always on the line. Now in Salt Lake City a murder was made. There was hardly a clue to find. Oh, the proof was poor, but the sheriff was sure Joe was the killer of the crime. That Joe was the killer of the crime. Joe raised his hands, but they shot him down. He had nothing but guilt to give. It's a doctor I need, and they left him to bleed. But he made it 'cause he had the will to live. Yes, he made it 'cause he had the will to live. Then the trial was held in a building of wood, and there the killer would be named. And the days weighed more than the cold copper ore, 'cause he feared that he was being framed. 'Cause he found out that he was being framed. Oh, strange are the ways of the Western law. Strange are the ways of fate. For the government crawled to the mine owner's call, and the judge was appointed by the state. Judge was appointed by the state. For 36 years he lived out his days. He more than played his part. For the songs that he made, he was carefully paid with a rifle bullet buried in his heart. With a rifle bullet buried in his heart. Yes, they lined Joe Hill up against the wall, blindfold over his eyes. It's the life of the rebel that he chose to live. It's the death of the rebel that he died. It's the death of the rebel that he died. Now some say Joe was guilty as charged. Some say he wasn't even there. And I guess nobody will ever know, 'cause the court records all have disappeared. 'Cause the court records all have disappeared. Say wherever you go in this fair land, every Union hall, in the dusty dark these words are marked, in between all the cracks upon the wall. In between all the cracks upon the wall. It's the very last lines that Joe Hill wrote when he knew that his days were through. Boys, this is my last and final will. Good luck to all of you. Good luck to all of you.
That's the beautiful tune, Joe Hill, by the great Phil Orks, one of the legends of American class-conscious folk music. Apologies for the interruption of the stream, Comrade Danny, technologically challenged as we all are. Instead of pressing to leave himself the stream, pressed end stream. It was late. It is late in the night, and as you all saw, he was a bit tired. So, our greatest apologies. I know this presents somewhat of an inconvenience. We're like the folks who had their accounts banned and then make a post saying, looking for, 7,000 friends, or my lost 7,000 friends. We're currently looking for our lost, 80 folks, 80 other folks who were in the stream. But I was able to see that before the stream ended, Ross, the unofficial or official sugar daddy of the institute, was able to give us $10. The communist Soros, Ross Ian Coyle, thank you so much, comrade, for the 10 euros. I don't know if you were asking a question. I didn't see, so please feel free to shoot me a question and I'll address it. We have quite a few. Let's see, is quite a few a correct term? No, we have a couple more stories that I wanted to touch before we ended the night. And as always, if any of y'all have questions on philosophy, geopolitics, whatever, I'm happy to stick around as long as y'all need. Let's see. Thank you so much, Penis Dragger, as one of my favorite names there. Admin question: do y'all get a better cut from Patreon membership or YouTube membership? Subbed on Patreon, but want to send them was. It's actually Patreon. Yeah, Patreon doesn't take off. Patreon doesn't get a cut. YouTube gets 30%. So with every donation and membership, YouTube gets 30% of that. Unfortunately, Patreon doesn't. So Patreon gives us a bigger cut. But yeah, thank you so much for the answer, and thank you so much for the $5 super chat, comrade. It's very much appreciated. I love Danny too, man. He'll make up for it. He'll make up for it. He's got some great content plans. He's always doing great work, and God, that man does interviews more than anyone I've ever seen in my life. Every day he's got to be cracking in two or three interviews with Press TV, Telesur, RT. Um, I have a couple more stories. One of them is a clip from a conversation that Tucker Carlson had with Roseanne Barr. I didn't know who Roseanne was until maybe a couple months ago. But yeah, and then the other one is a 1979 speech that Fidel gives at the United Nations. Um, this is something that whenever I need inspiration, I always put on. It's such a beautiful speech, and it's tremendously moving. And I found one that has the English subtitles, so um, that's always a plus. It's always good to end the night with Fidel. It's such an inspiring and in many ways prophetic figure. So I guess I'll go to the segment of Tucker Carlson and Roseanne Barr speaking about Julian Assange and not only the criminals he exposed, but the criminals that locked him behind bars. And this was posted, by the way, by the WikiLeaks. Shout out to WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks Twitter. They premised it by saying Tucker Carlson talks to Roseanne Barr about the continued incarceration of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Quote, they are torturing him to death in front of all of us. Mike Pompeo tried to have him murdered, which is true. He's not even charged with a crime in the U.S. So let's give this a watch. And Tucker's one of those really interesting figures to study. There's some stuff where you hear him talk and it's borderline fascistic and racist, and then there's other stuff where it's like how did they let you for that long speak certain truths? The way he approached the proxy war against Russia, you're speaking I don't know what else to call it, but speaking truth to power. I don't know why, but he was aligning himself with somewhat of a peace movement there. There's been some other areas after the Uhuru movement leadership was attacked. I think he had Omeli Yeshiteli. I'm sorry if I'm getting the name wrong. I believe he had him on, or he did do a segment where he played a speech that Omeli did. So, and he condemned the attacks on the Uhuru movement leadership. He's done some other stuff where it's like, it's strange to see him speak out against the establishment. But of course, these are contradictory figures with worldviews that are not the ones that we have, but that are influential to millions of people in the United States. So they're important to study, to understand, because we are going to encounter our conservative coworkers, community members who follow Tucker religiously. And if we can tell them, if you like Tucker, there's this way he describes the proxy war against Russia that's really interesting. Here's what is very correct about that. Boom. You start on a point of commonality. And then on the basis of that point, you help them rethink about the point where Tucker is right by expanding the way that the person makes sense of it. One of the things that the Marxist worldview does is help you make sense of things, and everyone wants to make sense of the world. Some are too lazy to make sense of it in a way that's actually better. But I'm very much ingrained in that tradition of the first line of Aristotle's Metaphysics: all men by nature desire to know. I think that's still true. If we can help people make sense of things without that initial interaction becoming a barrier, because the first thing we say when they tell us that they like Tucker, we say, "Oh, he's a fascist. You're a fascist." It's not the best way to organize. But if they tell us, we like Tucker, we can say, "Well, there's this interesting comment that he makes about Julian Assange," and I think it'd be interesting if he could think about how it is that this control of the narrative is an essential part of keeping the dominant power structures, where a small group of people get exorbitantly rich while the vast majority of us are just left working and being lied to and manipulated by the media and our history. So start on the point of commonality, take, as Gramsci would say, the rational kernel, in their common sense worldview and begin to re-articulate it towards socialism. And that's going to be a process that is facilitated if you start on that point of commonality. If you start on the point of disconnection, if they tell you like Tucker, and the first thing you bring up is, well, Tucker's a racist when it comes to immigrants, so are you a racist? That's not going to be the best approach, even if there's truth to that statement. Being true, being on the side of truth is only half of it. When you're an organizer, when you're a revolutionary, it's only half. You can be right all you want, and bring no one to your side. There's a certain sense of tactics, of being an educator in a sense, right? If I go up to my students and I just start letting go of terminology from the history of philosophy, what I might be saying might be 100% true. It might be super interesting. But who am I going to help understand what's going on? Who am I going to help educate? No one. In order to educate, you have to start where people are at and then move slowly, little by little, to where they need to go. And then that quantitative process, that little by little, at some point hits a nodal point, and the person's like, shit, maybe I agree with Marxism a lot more. Let me start studying it more profoundly. Let me join a party, study with other people. Let me involve myself in the struggle. So it's all dialectical, right? That quantitative accumulation, that process of educating, of going from their common sense to where you need them to go. At some point, it hits as Hegel would say, a nodal point, and there's a leap into a new qualitative state. That person goes from being just someone who's kind of skeptical of the media to boom, now you're a Marxist, because you understand that that's the best way to understand the world and to change it. But let's give this video a watch.
People in prison.
Yeah.
I guess I'm the liberal.
Yeah.
I've visited. I was in a prison last week. They're very depressing. I saw Julian Assange in London.
I wanted to ask you
Wouldn't
about
put
that.
people in prison,
No.
except for a very good reason. And they
Talk about the
put him
truth.
in prison.
Talk about the truth being illegal. Look at he's paid for it with dozens of people.
Well, Assange has never been accused of lying, or of fraud,
Mm-mm.
or of making money in some criminal scheme. Assange has been accused of telling the truth, period.
Yeah.
And they are torturing him to death in front of all of us. No one's doing anything about it. And that Mike Pompeo is a very, very sinister person.
Isn't he?
The worst.
Mhm.
And I always thought that, and I've told Trump that. Never should have allowed him to run CIA or state. But Mike Pompeo tried to have him murdered. And that's a criminal act. He was not even charged with a crime in the United States. And Mike Pompeo was CIA director. This came out. Pompeo didn't deny it.
I never heard this.
Oh, yes. Oh,
I
absolutely.
saw it.
Oh my God.
He tried to have Julian Assange murdered, poisoned in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. And that's a fact, okay?
Wow.
And it's been established. And okay,
Yes.
why is Mike Pompeo not in prison? You're
Yeah.
not allowed.
Yes. All definitely true. And that right there is, if you're speaking to a conservative coworker, that'll be a good touch point, a good point of connection for asking the following question. Why did Kissinger, a war criminal, get to live peacefully to 100? Why aren't any of these war criminals, Obama, Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Bush, why are any of these fucking war criminals that take our tax dollars to fund bombs dropping on innocent civilians, that take our tax dollars to fund the police force that kills us to the tune of thousands, irrespective of race? Not irrespective is not the best word, but of all races, right? They don't just kill black people or poor black people. They kill poor people across the board, because the police is the armed body of men of the imperialist state. So, what's our state doing? Is it our state, or is it the state of another class? You see, so you start with that point of connection and you begin to unfold things. And it's very easy. It's not that hard. It requires a level of flexibility, because you have to know, okay, where's that starting point for this person, for that person. But it's not that difficult. Thank you so much, Comrade Starbuck, for the Garrido Gospel Hour war chest. I was thinking about maybe doing a poll, something, to ask the people at home what these alone streams should be called. Eddie's got the great name, the Eddie Liger Power Hour. Noah and I have a show called the Carpenter and the Philosopher. What the hell would I call my alone streams? I'm gonna have a lot more time from now on, so I plan on doing these every other day. So if y'all have any suggestions, let me know. But the Garrido Gospel Hour, man, I love that. I love that. The Catholic seminarian in me. I went to I wasn't a seminary. I went to a private Catholic undergrad, so that part of me likes the Garrido Gospel Hour. I was militantly atheist for some reason until I took my Catholic religion courses and read some of the Catholic literature and the Catholic social teaching stuff. I was like, holy shit, this overlaps a lot with my Marxism. So it was a little bit less dogmatically atheist after that. But thank you so much, comrade, from the Fine Art Revolution, which, before the last stream was ended, we showed a great comment that you all did on that protest in the Starbucks. Gotta sleep. Thanks, Carlos and chat. Night. Thank you so much, brother, for the $2 super chat, and thank you again, Starback, for the €10 super chat. These are again fundamental for the Institute. We wouldn't be able to do even a fraction of what we do if it's not for this grassroots funded. So thank you so much. But let's keep this rolling a bit longer.
Allowed to murder people extrajudicially, especially when they haven't even been charged in the United States, which he had not been. Wow. So Mike Pompeo runs around to these stupid.
And this is the country that touts rule of law, right? It's all pure deception. It's all hypocrisy. None of the enunciated values, none of the enunciated laws are ever measured up to. They're never measured up to. A right, the first 10 rights that we have, a gift to us. I'm talking about the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the American Constitution, the gift given to us by the anti-federalists who felt that the Constitution was elitist. It was an aristocratic document. Those rights are violated as soon as you challenge the elite. Where's the First Amendment, the right to free speech? Where's the right to the right of media for Julian Assange? It's nowhere to be found. It's the person that speaks truth that challenges the narrative of the liars, of the misinformers, who then have the audacity to call themselves the ones that are battling misinformation. Talk about a fucking upside down world, huh? So it's the people that expose the crimes of the elite and its political puppets that are incarcerated, that are criminalized, that are tortured. But it's not the people whose crimes he exposed. None of those people. Nothing has happened to any of them. Nothing has happened to any of them.
Stupid Republican donor events, and you're like a world expert on whatever, and he's a criminal, and he should be in jail. Like, if Julian Assange is in jail, how about the attempted murderer, right?
How about
what am I missing?
How about the people that put Julian Assange in jail? They should be in jail.
100%. First, they accuse him falsely of rape. So, that just shuts people down. Oh, he's a rapist. It's like kiddie porn. It's like, I don't even want to know more. You're bad. Mm-hmm. But then it turns out there was not enough evidence to charge him. He didn't commit rape. That was a lie. He's never been accused of doing anything. By the way, he spent 4.5 years in prison in the UK at Belmarsh Prison, which is where all the murderers in London go.
Good God.
And he's never been charged with a crime.
Wow.
In the United Kingdom. To this day, he's not charged with a crime. He's being held at the request of the US government. And he's just sitting there, and they're torturing to death. I mean, he's of course dying, as you are when you've spent a total of 13 years now in incarceration. So
I wanted Trump to pardon him. And I was really disappointed.
I was disappointed, and I think Trump. I would say one.
Here's another point, right? A lot of these people, the liberals want us to think that the folks that like Trump are, the most dogmatic. People who just religiously follow everything Trump says. And sure, there might be some that are like that. But the vast majority of them are willing to have these sorts of critiques, like the one that Roseanne Barr made. I wanted him to pardon Assange. Why didn't he pardon him? There's others that criticize other parts of Trump's actions while in office, other opinions that he's stated since he left office. So we can contextualize that Trump phenomenon. We can't do that if we start by, this is a fascist movement, all of you are fascists. I don't care how much truth there might be to Trump's affinities with a certain form of fascism. First of all, if we're thinking about fascism from a materialist standpoint, the whole fucking state is en route to fascism. We're seeing a lot of proto-fascism coming from both parties, because that's structurally, fascism is that moment where coercion becomes a little bit more dominant than it used to be. The democratic rights of working people and marginalized, oppressed peoples are rolled back in order to secure the profits of capital. So, what we're seeing with Trump, sure, you can start the conversation by saying, yeah, Trump's a fascist. It's MAGA's a fascist movement. Who are you going to convince? How many conservative co-workers are you going to convince? Because what's implied in that? If Trump's a fascist and they voted for Trump, they were part of the MAGA movement, you're calling them a fascist. Who are you going to organize if you go up to people calling them fascists? So that doesn't work. So if you have a different sort of analysis, if you go at it from the standpoint of, look, working people are so damn tired of the establishment that they voted for Trump because he presented himself as an outsider, someone that was going to drain the swamp, that was going to combat the deep state, the national security state, which is what the deep state is understood as, that was going to fight against the establishment. But let's analyze whether that's actually the case. And, that's what you wanted out of Trump. Here's why Trump structurally can't do that. And here's what can. And it's socialism that can. The promise that a lot of the working class part of the MAGA movement felt with Trump, someone who was going to fight for regular working people or for them against the elite that have been destroying their lives for decades, that promise can only be fulfilled by socialists. But it can't be fulfilled if we approach these people in the very condescending, almost antisocial manners in which a lot of the left has been, where they've just accepted the dictum of Comrade Hillary Clinton that these are all a bunch of baskets of deplorables. That's absurd. That's a form of the purity fetish. This part of the working class is not enlightened enough in terms of various social values that we consider to be enlightened, and therefore we're going to cancel them. They're too impure to organize. We're not going to organize them. They're too backwards to organize. That's absurd. Any member of the working class, regardless of their ideological position, has potential to be a part of this great movement of humanity that's embodied in working people and that can bring about a world that's radically free unlike anything we've ever seen before, that's a lot more democratic, that's not governed by exploitation and the interests of capital. Don't let anyone fool you. We want to organize our class. We're not, sitting there asking, well, who'd you vote for? And who'd you vote for? And what do you think about this issue or that? No. We're organizing working people, irrespective of their ideological positions. We're organizing them as a class and bringing them towards socialism, class consciousness. That requires us going down, being with them, not being condescending. We go down to learn and also come up with them. It's neither the case that we're the sort of elite that is just far ahead of the people and that's like trying to drag them, but it's also neither the case that we only go down to the people to stay there and chill. It's a both and. It's a dialectical relationship. We learn from the people and we also lead the people as the people.
I think very fair criticism of Trump is he does tend to surround himself with some of the most mediocre people.
Yeah.
And
I don't think he can find better.
That may be right. But I have to say, Mike Pompeo, and I saw it up close and I saw it intimately close, is a liar and a flatterer. Beware the flatterers. If someone comes up to you and says, I don't like you, fuck you, and here's why. Mm-hmm. I can deal with that.
I can too.
If someone's like, I really think you may be the reincarnation of the Godhead.
There you go. Well, if no one else is good, if everyone else sucks, that tells you something about the system. You see another point of connections. We have to train ourselves when we want to convince people, when we're taking part in this war of positions, in this ideological war to win hearts and minds, to create counter-hegemonic institutions to build dual power. When we're doing this, we have to be trained to be able to get these rational kernels, to get points of connection like that? Well, why is it that everyone around them sucked? Why is it that everyone sucked? Could it be a systemic thing? Does a good system produce a bunch of these people that suck? Is it a substantial property of the system to produce these horrendous people? Or is it an accidental property? In socialism, you have leaders that are corrupt. One of the campaigns that has been the most notable in Xi Jinping's governance has been the battle against corruption in the party. So yes, there is corruption. There can be corruption in a socialist society, but it's an accidental property. That means it is not a substantial property. It is a property that it could exist without, and that it ideally would exist without. That's not the case in capitalism, because what ends up to any rational person thinking from the standpoint of the people looking like corruption, politicians representing the elite, is a structurally necessary component, a substantial component of the system itself. The system has to produce these. What are accidental properties are when the system produces people who are honest and fight actually for working people with a certain level of decency. People like the late Mike Gravel or Gravel. His whole life was on the side of standing for the people against war, and for fighting constantly to try to lift as best as he could the living standards of his people. Wasn't a Marxist, Leninist, communist, but was just a regular decent person who took government of, by, and for the people and rights to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness seriously, and saw that within the confines of how things are operating, it's virtually no, it's impossible. It's structurally impossible. That's part of the paradox that we have here in the US. It's a very interesting one. We're founded, first state in history, founded under the ideals that all people are created equal. We know what that meant at the time, just white men, property owners. But the ideals were still there. They're not made it's not enunciated. All white men with property are created equal. No, it says all men are created equal. They needed to win the masses. Endowed by their creator, so it's beyond just a social thing. We're ontologically equal, with the rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So on, so on, so on, so on. And if a government oppresses these, they have not only the right, but the duty to overthrow it. What more radical foundation? And then the statements made in the Gettysburg Address. Another one of these pivotal documents that represents that Second American Revolution that we call the Civil War. Government of, by, and for the people. What we have fought here, what many have died for, is the attempt to preserve a government of, by, and for the people. Let me tell you something, folks. The logical and practical conclusion of all of those ideals is socialism. Socialism. You can't have a government of, by, and for the people under capitalism. The whole point of the government under capitalism is to serve the capitalists, which is a small fraction of society. So again, logical and practical conclusions of these ideals that the American people buy into, that they already believe, is socialism. So again, going back to how we organize on the basis of where people are at and then take them to where they have to be, if people are buying into these ideals, which they are, the vast majority of them are, that's a perfect starting point to take them to socialism. That is how the foundation of American socialism emerges. In the 1830s, figures like Cornelius Blatchley, Langdon Bilsby, William McClure, all these geniuses, people deeply rooted in the Enlightenment values, in the values of Jeffersonian democracy that were never realized, and who were committed to these ideals in a way that led them to understand that under the current existing relations of production, under the current mode of life, we cannot realize those. We cannot make those actual. We need socialism to make those actuals. The idea they had of socialism was like a form of communalism, cooperativism, and It was still rooted in certain forms of utopian hints, but it was the kernel for a scientific socialism a couple decades before Marx and Engels. Very impressive. We don't know this history. We don't know this history. This history has been ignored. It's been hidden from us. Can you imagine after decades of the elite and their puppets, their ideologues telling us, no, 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 no. So socialism, that's anti-American. The American people will never believe in socialism. What is it that Trump said a while back? We will never be a communist country. Motherfucker. Where were the utopian socialist experiments at? What country were they in? Most of them. In the US. The Owenite communities, New Harmony, the Fourierist communities, they were all in the US. We were, in many ways, the birthplace of modern utopian socialism. The people that Engels talks about in Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific. Saint-Simon, Robert Owens, Charles Fourier. The utopian communities that were created on the basis of their thought, were in the US. The US was the first place that I know of to develop from the 1830s. Two decades before. So Marx and Engels developed Marxism proper around 1845, 46. That's when they're writing the German ideology. From the 1830s, 1820, even earlier, 1826, you have these texts of people trying to analyze the dominant economic system scientifically and seeing how, from the basis of the contradictions in that system itself, you can have something like socialism. That is an insane revelation. How are you going to tell me that the history of our people is antithetical to socialism when we had the first utopian communities of the modern world, and most of them, and when it's very likely that the first attempt at formulating scientific socialism, what we will later come to know as Marxism, was attempted here in the US. And the people that attempted it were in contact with folks like Jefferson, who, very contradictory figure, imperialist, blockade against Haiti, expansion westward, but who was sympathetic to some of those ideas. Slave owner. So, how are you going to sit here and talk to me about the supposedly unbridgeable gap between our people's history and our people and socialism? It's absurd. That's why we developed the Journal of American Socialism. It's a way for us to reflect on the history of struggles that our nation has partaken in. And this is necessary. It's go back to Dimitrov, go back to your Stalin, to your Lenin, to Mao, any of these great communist thinkers. They've always understood that the struggle for socialism cannot just exist in this abstract ether. It has to take various determinate forms. It has to, look like, take characteristics in line with the people that are fighting those struggles in specific national contexts. In China, you have socialism with Chinese characteristics. In Cuba, it means the ever-presence of Jose Marti and the Imambises, the anti-colonial tradition. In Venezuela, it's the Bolivarian socialism that they're constructing. In Bolivia, it's going back to the communalist, almost like primary communist traditions of the indigenous people. It takes specific forms. And the content is the same. The content is socialism, but it takes a national form. So it's necessary for us to recapture this history, to learn our history of struggle, and to root our struggles in it. It gives our current struggle historical legs. And it lets us know that we're not the first ones fighting this. There's a long history of people that have been fighting the same fight in different contexts with different emphasis because of the difference of context. But we don't want those people to have lived and suffered and have been repressed and died and sometimes even killed in vain. We have to redeem that past. We have to redeem the legacy of the ancestors we have in our struggle. This is this is a way of engaging with the question of socialism and the class struggle in the US that was common sense decades ago, before the infiltration of the fake left and of the new left and all of these projects that were funded. We have the proof. They were all funded by these massive capitalist foundations, the Rockefellers, the Fords. They were funded by the State Departments to create a compatible anti-communist left McCarthyism, as Parenti would say. That in terms of worldview, their worldview is the purity fetish. It's not Marxism. It's not dialectical materialism. Yeah, that's that. Janice Anderson, thank you so much for the $2 super chat. Rights are not rights if they could be taken away. That's absolutely right. That is no pun intended, but that's absolutely correct. You know what? I think it's George Carlin that makes a joke out of this, but how are we going to sit here and talk about rights, human rights? Where are our fucking human rights? You know, the Declaration from '56 of the social, economic, and cultural rights of people put forward by the UN to document that we don't follow. You know, we don't secure these social rights, which include the rights to housing, to food, to a proper education, to a job that pays you enough to live somewhat comfortably, the right to not starve, right? So to not be in poverty. You know, we don't have those social rights. But do we even have the individual ones? Right to free speech. Where are the individual rights that we claim to uphold when they're violated as soon as we become an inconvenience for the state? So, let me see the chat. What's going on? That's what Midwestern March write a better constitution in half an hour. Yes, absolutely. Let's see. If Americans knew they invented socialism, they would have private. I wouldn't say we invented socialism, like even utopian socialism. Our tradition goes back to, seeing Saint Simon, Owens, and Fourier, but utopian socialism goes way back. You got Campanella, you got Thomas More. It goes back at least to the 15th century. And before that, you have various forms of Christian communism. Even St. Augustine. If you read St. Augustine's economic work, he believed that they had to live in a form of communism, that they had to share property. It's a very, I guess, vulgar understanding of communism. It's not what we'd call communism now, but you look at St. Augustine and the political economy of some of the Central Catholic theologians, and it's communist. Marx says in a letter, they ask him, where has communism ever worked? He said, go read the letters of St. Paul. So you got this utopian tradition. It goes back, it's got 3 stages. Cheng and Fu has done some really good work. He's one of the directors of the Chinese Academy for Social Sciences. Brilliant, top of the line Chinese scholar, economist. He's done a lot of work on this history of socialism. He divides the utopian into 3 phases. But you can go before that. You can go to the Christian tradition. You can go to the indigenous traditions. At least in the U.S., they lived in basically communist societies for millenniums. You can go before that in terms of the West. You can go to Plato. Republic, it's a weird in terms of its politics. It's got hints of fascism here. Very elitist, but the elite class, the guardians, which is how he calls the elite class, the sort of higher echelons of basically mental workers and rulers, which would have a philosopher king at the top. They're supposed to share everything in common, even like women. That's why the idea gets into people's heads that communism is about women sharing, and it's one of the older replies that anti-communists would give. But yeah, let's see what else is going on in the chat. Knights of Labor. I haven't read too much on them. I've read some. They were fairly progressive, but as most groups, they had at the time a very limited understanding of what class struggle entailed. Not enough organizing in what Du Bois would call the black proletariat, which is fundamental for the class struggles of the U.S. and a lot of vacillation there. But my area of focus in U.S. socialist history has always been the 1820s, 1830s. So the origins of socialism in the U.S. But thank you for the question. Let's see. Okay. Well, let's go into our last segment of the day. We've been streaming. God, I had 3 hours and maybe 15 minutes on the other one, and we have how many minutes here? 45 minutes. Been streaming for 4 hours. But this is a speech, 1979, Fidel Castro at the UN. It's the equivalent for me of like when people put up a pump up song before working out or while working out or before a game or something. It's a tremendously motivational video, and as is always the case with Fidel, tremendously pertinent. I mentioned this the other day, but most Fidel videos, you can just put him in. He could be reincarnated saying the same thing right now, 2023, and it would still be incredibly useful. So let's listen. And it starts with a clip that's not from the speech, but it's before, where he does something pretty badass. They ask him if he has a bulletproof vest, and he opens up and shows his bare chest. But let's listen in. Let me know if the captions are readable, or if you would like me to make the video bigger or something.
Siempre está protegido con su traje. ¿Cuál traje? What suit? Everybody says you always have a que todo el mundo dice que usted tiene un chaleco a prueba de balas. No. Voy a desembarcar así en Nueva York. I will land in New York like this. Tengo un chaleco. I will land in New York like this. Tengo un chaleco moral.
That was beautiful, man. When he went to Harlem, oh my God, people went crazy when he went to Harlem. He went to go speak at a black church, and the speech that he gave was amazing. He quoted, I believe it was Tupac Amaru, who was asked right before being murdered if he would like to ask for forgiveness to go to heaven. And he asks, will all of you be in heaven? Will all of you colonizers be in heaven? If so, then fuck that. I don't want to go to heaven. Keep me far away from wherever the fuck you guys are. He quoted that in a black church, and everyone was like, that was awesome. But the people in the most oppressed sectors of American society have loved Fidel, just like the people around the world, around the global South, have loved Fidel. Look at the EFF's conference for the 10th anniversary. There's a clip. Julius Malema is finishing the speech. He's elevated on the platform, confetti's flying, music's out, and they show the stadium, and the only flag that's there waving massively is the Cuban flag. The African people do not forget. They don't forget what the Cubans sacrificed very early on in their revolution. They're dealing with blockades, having to figure out how the fuck to get the necessaries of life. Half of the mental capital left. There was some. I think it was the University of Havana. Most of the professors of medicine, so the doctors, left. Maybe 30% that were left. In that whole context, they're trying to develop a generation of doctors, educators, doing literacy campaigns, trying to survive. And they're sending people to fight against apartheid, to fight for anti-colonial struggles in Angola, around Africa. So the African people have never forgotten that. And you see that there in the 10th anniversary Congress of the EFF. The Global South loves Fidel. Today you go through the West Bank, you go through Gaza, maybe not Gaza because of the bombing, but you might still see some of the murals dedicated to Che, to Fidel. Danny mentioned earlier the connections, the deep connections of the PLO to the Cuban revolutionaries. So let's keep this going.
Señor presidente, distinguidos representantes.
Oh my God, I'm gonna have to react to that at some point. Epic rap battles of history, Marx versus Ford. Yeah, I'll have that as one of the segments in Sunday to react to. By the way, if anyone's interested in sending me segments to react to for these streams, we have a whole section of the Discord dedicated to people sending in segments for us to react to. So every Patreon member gets access to our Discord. You can be a Patreon for just $1. So consider doing that. If not, feel free to email us, and we'll check out the material and see if it's something we should react to. But yeah.
Se habla con frecuencia de los derechos humanos, pero hay que hablar también de los derechos de la humanidad. ¿Por qué unos pueblos han de andar descalzos para que otros viajen en lujosos automóviles? ¿Por qué unos han de vivir 35 años para que otros vivan 70? ¿Por qué unos han de ser míseramente pobres para que otros sean exageradamente ricos? Hablo en nombre de los niños que en el mundo no tienen un pedazo de pan. Hablo en nombre de los enfermos que no tienen medicinas. Hablo en nombre de aquellos a los que se les ha negado el derecho a la vida y la dignidad humana. Unos países poseen, en fin, abundantes recursos. Otros no poseen nada. ¿Cuál es el destino de estos? Morirse de hambre. Ser eternamente pobres. ¿Para qué sirve entonces la civilización? ¿Para qué sirve la conciencia del hombre? ¿Para qué sirven las Naciones Unidas?
Oof. If only we had someone to do that today, go to the United Nations and say, why the fuck do you exist? If it's not so that in moments like this, where there's an active genocide going on, where a whole people are attempting, are about to be, are potentially going to be exterminated, why do you exist? If in moments like this, you get your palms and you sit on them and do nothing. Fidel there says it perfectly. What's your purpose? Why do you exist? If you're going to do nothing about the growing inequality, the fact that in one pole of the world, so much of the riches are accumulated in the hands of a very few amount of people, while the vast majority of humanity struggles to survive. What's the purpose of the United Nations? as I mentioned, we can you play Fidel in 2023, and it's as if he's speaking to us right now.
¿Para qué sirve el mundo? No se puede hablar de paz en nombre de decenas de millones de seres humanos que mueren cada año de hambre o enfermedades curables en todo el mundo. No se puede hablar de paz en nombre de 900 millones de analfabetos. La explotación de los países pobres por los países ricos debe cesar. Sé que en muchos países pobres hay también explotadores y explotados. Me dirijo a las naciones ricas para que contribuyan. Me dirijo a los países pobres para que distribuyan. Basta ya de palabras. Hacen falta hechos. Basta ya de abstracciones. Hacen falta acciones concretas. Basta ya de hablar de un nuevo orden económico internacional especulativo que nadie entiende. Hay que hablar de un orden real y objetivo que todos comprendan. No he venido aquí como profeta de la revolución. No he venido a pedir o desear que el mundo se convulsione violentamente. Hemos venido a hablar de paz y colaboración entre los pueblos. Y hemos venido a advertir que si no resolvemos pacífica y sabiamente las injusticias y desigualdades actuales, el futuro será apocalíptico. El ruido de las armas, del lenguaje amenazante, de la prepotencia en la escena internacional debe cesar. Basta ya de la ilusión de que los problemas del mundo se pueden resolver con armas nucleares. Las bombas podrán matar a los hambrientos, a los enfermos, a los ignorantes, pero no pueden matar el hambre, las enfermedades, la ignorancia. No pueden tampoco matar la justa rebeldía de los pueblos. Y en el holocausto morirán también los ricos, que son los que más tienen que perder en este mundo. Digamos adiós a las armas y consagrémonos civilizadamente a los problemas más agobiantes de nuestra era. Esa es la responsabilidad y el deber más sagrado de todos los estadistas del mundo. Esa es, además, la premisa indispensable de la supervivencia humana. Muchas gracias.
I know I'm biased here, but man, for me, in the 20th century, there's nothing. There's nothing that can match Fidel. The level of principle, the level of what we Cubans call cojones, guts. But I think our Mexican brothers and sisters call agallas. Just a tremendously impressive figure. And Don't let his practice fool you. He was also a deeply theoretical man. From the start, people think that the revolution was just that when Fidel led the revolution, he was just like a nationalist, and then he got radicalized and became a communist. No. Fidel has said it explicitly, man. I've been a communist from the beginning, from before the assault on the Moncala barracks. We would do reading groups where we would read Marx, Engels, Lenin, the collected works of Lenin, where we would read Franz Mehring's biography of Marx, which I have it somewhere around here. I have it in German, the original German. So brilliant man, tremendous leader, in many ways embodied the archetype of what Che Guevara thought the new socialist men and women would be like. And today, not only a whole island of 11 million, but countless millions of people from around the world look at him and the revolution he led as an example. Even these more moderate revolutions, or perhaps some might not be capable of being called revolutions, but leftist governments in Latin America, take Chile, the Venezuelan Revolution, Ecuador, Bolivia, to some extent now even Mexico and the Cuarta Transformación, the Fourth Transformation, Nicaragua, and others, Honduras, all of these countries, even Petro in Colombia, all of these countries owe so much to the one country in the hemisphere that has never let imperialism knock it down, that has withstood everything thrown at them. The 90s were hard. The caloric intake dropped by half. Those basic necessities were hard to come by. And the people preferred to live in the misery that the imperialists forced upon Cubans, which was a misery that, by the way, if Cuba had been dominated by the free market logic, it would have been a famine. But they prevented that. People were hungry, but no one was starving to death. But nonetheless, hard conditions were forced on them by the imperialist blockade, by the fall of the Soviet Union, by the fact that Cuba was left alone. And the people never gave in. They preferred to endure everything and sustain sovereignty than give up their sovereignty, give up their revolution. It's a tremendous example for humanity, and it's in the same way that I think today the Palestinian struggle represents the best of what humanity has to give. A people that, regardless of everything, they don't give up. They continue to fight for their homeland, against apartheid, against oppression. Same thing with Cuba, man. Same thing with Cuba. It's tremendously impressive. But now that we have finished on a proper Fidelista note, I wanted to maybe close out, instead of with the International that we started with a classic of the Cuban Revolution. Aesthetics is and art is so incredibly important, and a lot of these songs that arise out of these revolutionary movements, some which are written before the triumph of power, some after, they end up being the soundtrack of the revolution. When I think of Chile, Victor Jara comes to mind. When I think of the Cuban Revolution, Carlos Puebla comes to mind. And then when I think of the generations that it created, I think of Silvio Rodriguez, Pablito Milanés, and a bunch of the other ones. So let's listen to Carlos Puebla, y en eso llegó Fidel, to roll out. Thank you so much to everyone who's been watching, man. We've been going on for 4 hours. perhaps a little more, 4.5 hours. It's the longest stream I think we've ever done. Definitely the longest I've ever done. Thank you to everyone who donated. I like to go through all of the donations at the end of the day, but of course, the first 3 hour and 15-minute stream was removed accidentally by Comrade Danny, so I can't thank those people. But if they're listening in, thank you to all of those who were able to donate to the first stream. Thank you to Penis Dragger. Again, fantastic name. Love it. Starback, thank you so much, brother. Thank you to the comrades from the Fine Arts Revolution. Thank you, Janice, so much. Thank you to all of you, man. Without these donations, we literally would not be able to run the Institute. And I think the Institute plays a tremendously important role in our era of transition, our era of crisis. So, again, thank you to everyone who watched. Thank you to everyone who was able to donate. If you can't donate and you want to help, please make sure to share our streams around, like them, send them to your friends and families. But with that, let's sign out to Carlos Puebla, again, revolutionary musician. And this song that we're going to listen to is called Y en eso llegó Fidel. And that's when Fidel got here. So thank you all for joining me today, and we'll see you Sunday.
La canción que ahora vamos a cantarles cuenta, ¿no?, de cómo era Cuba en el pasado, de cómo aquí todo estaba en las manos de 4 señores y de cómo aquellos señores querían que se mantuviera aquel sistema. Pero dice la canción, y en eso llegó Fidel. Aquí pensaban seguir ganando el 100% con casas de apartamentos y echar al pueblo a sufrir y seguir de modo cruel contra el pueblo conspirando para seguirlo explotando, y en eso llegó Fidel. Y se acabó la diversión, llegó el comandante y mandó a parar. Y se acabó la diversión, llegó el comandante y mandó a parar. Aquí pensaban seguir tragando y tragando tierra, sin sospechar que en la sierra se alumbraba el porvenir, y seguir de modo cruel la costumbre del delito, hacer de Cuba un garito, y en eso llegó Fidel. Y se acabó la diversión, llegó el comandante y mandó a parar. Y se acabó la diversión, llegó el comandante y mandó a parar. Aquí pensaban seguir diciendo que los cuatreros, forajidos, bandoneros, asolaban al país, y seguir de modo cruel con la infamia por escudo, difamando a los barbudos, y en eso llegó Fidel. Y se acabó la diversión, llegó el comandante y mandó a parar. Y se acabó la diversión, llegó el comandante y mandó a parar. Aquí pensaban seguir jugando a la democracia y el pueblo que en su desgracia se acabara de morir, y seguir de modo cruel sin cuidarse ni la forma, con el robo como norma, y en eso llegó Fidel. Y se acabó la diversión, llegó el comandante y mandó a parar. Y se acabó la diversión, llegó el comandante y mandó a parar.